Second fight of my career was against Rene Rose. It was at the Budokan with about 50,000 people. Back in that time, the rule set was really up in the air, so had like holding ropes hitting to the back of the head. This was a crazy rule set. One of the fights that I took a lot of damage, so me and James are going to discuss it, so enjoy. Right on.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. My name is James, and as always, I'm joined by the MMA legend himself, Mr. Enson Inoue. Enson, how you doing? You okay?
Good, man. Everything's really good. Getting hot here in Japan, but really nice.
Yeah, UK has kind of finished the heat wave, but I heard it's going to come back, so I'll be joining you soon. At least you have air conditioning, so.
Yeah, I got air conditioning.
Nice and breezy. Great. So what we're getting into today is we're going to be talking a bit about your next fight, which was the Rene Rose fight, which is a really, really important fight in your career, I think, as you overcame some pretty big hurdles within that fight. But before we get into that, let's just go back to where we left off, where we were talking about your debut fight in Korakuen Hall, and kind of was keen to know just a little bit about, was there any sort of a buzz after that fight, just maybe from fans, maybe from media? You know, what was the sort of atmosphere after the fight?
You know, I always said that in my life, I always had the right timing on everything. And even this situation with martial arts was a perfect timing because in Japan, there was a huge buzz about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So I think that they already had a UFC. Hoist was a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu representative. Ken Shamrock was huge in Japan. So when Hoist submitted Ken, it was like, holy shit, what's this Gracie Jiu-Jitsu stuff? And I was, I was only a blue belt, but I was a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Not necessarily a representative, but just a practitioner. And that was a big thing because the whole usually when you get the second fight of the night, you have a little black and white article on Enson and James defeats Shigeta Shingo. But for this fight, it was really weird. I had a full color page, and it's a picture of me mount punching Shigeta, and it was like the title of that on top of the page. It said a monster, a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu monster. That's Japanese, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a real funny thing because up until that day, you know, I always considered myself Japanese in Hawaii, but I was always a foreigner. And I felt when I first went to Japan, that was my biggest culture shock, that I wasn't Japanese. And so, you know, I had a big chip on my shoulder about not being Japanese, but being American. And it kind of threw me off guard when I had that article and said, a Japanese that knows jiu-jitsu. I'm like, wow, all of a sudden I became Japanese. But yeah, it was a huge thing. I mean, it was like a buzz. It was a huge buzz in the whole martial arts world in Japan. Like, holy shit. And you know what helped the buzz was that was only the second time that Sayama's had that. He had this new general style shooting. So shoot fighting was like Pancrase, where once you got the mount, you couldn't hit to the face. You know, Pancrase, you could open palm only. And Shuto, you couldn't strike to the face. You had to do submissions and body shots only. So in order to incorporate my jiu-jitsu, Sayama created something called they call it the freestyle rules, freestyle Shuto. And so the buzz wasn't just Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It was the first introduction in Japan where they could see it live, where somebody was actually pounding, mount punching. It was actually officially the second fight that's ever been like that. But the first one was with Nakai Yuki and Arthur Ketcher, and it was kind of like a trial one that Sayama wanted to do. And it was more like a grappling match. They were striking, but there wasn't a dominance that there was in my fight, where you mount punch and you literally, you literally just pound and beat someone. So in Japan, there was a huge buzz about this freestyle rules and this Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Yeah, it was a huge buzz.
Yeah, it feels that way. You know, going back and watching your career, especially as well. you were quite sizable compared to some of the other guys coming out the Shuto gym. I noticed that in a lot of the earlier Shuto cards, there was quite a lot of smaller guys, like more like Nakai size, that were kind of sort of build, on those cards. And so yeah, so I think probably there was a lot of interest from that point of view. In terms of interest, though, what was Sayama's interest? Because at this time, it's sort of late January 1995. He's getting ready to sort of put on Vale Tudo, the big tournament in April 1995. He's obviously seen you come off this big win. What was his thinking behind maybe your next fight?
Well, I didn't know what his thinking was, but I just thought it was about fighting in Shuto. But I think Shuto was like how do I say this? Sayama explained to me that Shuto is like the preliminary bouts to Vale Tudo Japan. So anybody who was really big in the Shuto Association, only certain special guys were invited to fight in Vale Tudo. So if you were invited to fight in Vale Tudo, you were like you're like a Shuto star. Only the stars in Shuto were allowed to fight in Vale Tudo Japan, or invited to Vale Tudo Japan. And so I didn't know that I could possibly be a candidate to that, because I just had one fight. I just thought it was just going to be Shuto. But Simon had some other ideas, where he came and asked me that I want you to fight in the next fight. I think it was January 21st. It's crazy how I remember these dates. So it was January 21st that I had my debut, and I think it was April 20th. My Lenny Rose fight. Like 3 months later, he wants me to fight in he wanted me to fight in the Vale Tudo in the tournament.
Right. And so when he asked you to fight in the tournament, what was your reaction?
I knew Rickson was fighting in the tournament, and I still had my loyalty to the Gracies, because I didn't feel that it was loyalty to, for me, it wasn't a sport. For me, it was a fight for life and death. And I couldn't see myself wanting to kill Rickson. Not that I could have. I'm not saying I could have killed Rickson. He probably kicked my ass, but at the time, I couldn't feel proper. I didn't feel right using what they taught me against themselves. Mm-hmm. So when Sam asked me to fight in the Vale Tudo Japan tournament, and I knew Rickson was in there, I told him I can't even show that possibility that I'm okay with fighting Rickson, because I wasn't. And he's saying, you're not going to fight Rickson. You can fight someone else the first round. But I told him that the fact that I'm accepted to be in a tournament that Rickson's in, I'm accepting that I could fight Rickson, which is not true. So I declined, and I told Sam that if you want me to be in the Vale Tudo Japan, I can't fight in the tournament. So he said, okay, special one match.
Special exhibition. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And for those that watched the previous episodes, if you haven't, make sure go back and watch. But you sort of talked about, actually, one of the reasons that sort of made you want to get into the ring was actually watching Rickson fight in Vale Tudo 94. So I could see why, jumping in the tournament is going to be the last thing on your mind. He's a friend.
Yeah, no shit, yeah.
Yeah. So as we go on then, so you agree to the bout. And for those that haven't seen this event, it's actually available on Fight Pass. So check it out. In the event, what you see is actually there's like a press conference, which basically they use it to not really promote the fight. It's really more to sort of let the fighters know what the rules are, right? And that was a big part of those events, because back in the day, it was so much more less established, and fighters were keen to know what they could and couldn't do. Any particular memories of that, the conference there, and just sort of, how did that make you feel, knowing that there's guys sort of debating different rules about what they could or could not do to you in potentially some of these fights that you're going to be in?
Yeah, well, at the time, it wasn't even called MMA. It wasn't even called No Holds Barred. It was called Vale Tudo, which means everything goes. So there wasn't a set structure on rules. The closest thing you had to it was Pancrase, where they had open palms and rope escapes, and like elbows, biting, headbutts. In Brazil, they had those all-out bare-fisted fights where they could do everything pretty much. So, Sayama wanted to turn into a sport, and he was, I believe he was so unsure about the rules himself. He actually was guided by Hickson. I think he took a lot of what Hickson's opinion was and made the rule set. And because there was no uniform rules and because it was pretty much introduced per event, that big rule meeting was to hash out the rules. It wasn't really it was maybe 80% to tell you what the rules are, but you could actually argue it and decline it. So it was really confusing because you go in and they'll tell you the rules. I don't agree with that. Why don't you agree with it? Because there's a okay, no rope is no rope, no rope escape. You know, it was so grassroots, man. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and Hickson came out with a documentary on this tournament, and in that you can see like a lot of the Americans sort of debating the rules, exactly what you're saying. So it just looks a bit chaotic, to be honest. But I guess that's how it was back then, you know.
Yeah, it was still in the stage of actually structuring it. So whenever you're making a new sport, there's always these little, arguments that change a lot of the rules and the way it's done. So it was so raw. It was actually in that stage of the sport.
Yeah, yeah. And so for you, this is, a big step up on a bigger platform. As I mentioned, your first shooter fight was in Korakuen Hall, about 1,800 sort of capacity, and then you move up to the big Vale Tudo tournament in a special exhibition fight, and which is in Budokan Hall, which is about sort of 15,000 people. Did that sort of play into your head a little bit in terms of how many people would actually be watching the fight live?
No, it didn't really dawn on me. Budokan actually holds 50,000.
Oh,
So yeah, 50,000. So
wow.
I didn't Korakuen. I think about 1,700. I'm not sure how much, 15 to 1,700. But no, for one, I didn't really know what the Budokan was. I know it was a bigger event. I knew it was probably a bigger arena, but I didn't imagine it was. I mean, that much bigger and that much of a big event. So yeah, it was. It wasn't on my mind. It wasn't any um, part of my decision to fight or not.
Mm.
Because bottom line for me is how you have the people in the UFC now saying that they don't want to fight without a crowd or with the crowd it feels so much better. For me, I'm so tunnel vision that once we get in the ring, it's me and my opponent. Sometimes I don't even see the referee. So it's me and my opponent. Whether there's 2 people watching, there's 1,000 people, thousands of people watching. Whether it's televised or not televised, for me, it's a fight, and it doesn't matter. The outcome isn't going to be any different if there's more people or less people.
Right, it makes sense. It's more about the competition rather than the actual spectacle for you. It's more about the feeling of getting in there and doing it. So going into the fight, I noticed actually that and this was the same, I think, for your debut fight. You were wearing red, white, and blue shorts. Was there a particular reason you chose to go with that attire?
Yeah, it was just my a little chip that I had about how I was treated in Japan. I was discriminated against because I was not Japanese national. Although I have Japanese blood, I still couldn't, I couldn't get a visa. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't work. I couldn't buy a car. I couldn't, there was all these restrictions on you. You're treated differently. You're actually, Japan has a little bit of prejudice against foreigners, and it still exists today. And for me, I just felt this real, when they wrote when the first, when I was going to fight, it was like I still was like this. I'm not a Japanese person. I'm fighting for my country, America. I'm representing America. So I purposely went and grabbed red, white, and blue tights. I think it was aerobic tights. There was no MMA tights yet, so it was the ones that people would use as aerobics. Yeah, so I kind of looked for those. It was red, white, and blue was perfect, and I just wanted to. It was my stance and my protest on discrimination I had in Japan. My whole thing was I'm not Japanese, I'm American.
Out of interest, did any of the like your fellow training partners or fighters? Did anyone bring that up to you at all and just sort of query it? Or?
No, I never got approached with it, and no one has actually asked me about it.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I've even talked about it. This might be the first time there's an explanation on why I was wearing the red, white, and blue shorts.
There you go, exclusive for the podcast.
Yeah.
So going into this fight, you faced Rene Rose, who, for those who don't know, was from a Dutch kickboxing and Thai boxing background, and a really, well-known sort of striker. When you were backstage, had you done much research on your opponent? Did you know much about him leading up into the fight? And I guess any other sort of feelings, as you sort of getting close to
when
the fight?
Sam told me who he was, I looked him up. And I remember I got this one fight where he was like, he was really aggressive. Right off the bell, he was attacking. And I think he was like a kind of dirty fighter. Like I think he kicked him in the groin, and he did some pretty flagrant illegal shots. So the reputation that I got from what I heard and what I read about Lenny Rose was he was really a dirty fighter and a real aggressive fighter. So, for me, it didn't intimidate me at all. I just felt that it was easier for me to hate him. It was easier for me to try and hurt him. So for me, it was like, wow, cool. I mean, aggressive guy. Let's get to it, because I'm aggressive. He's aggressive. Let's head on, man. I also found out he was 6'7".
Yeah,
6'7". Like I was like, holy shit. I mean, I didn't have the the resources to bring in a 6'7" guy to spar with. So I pretty much had to just and figure out on that day when I walk in and see that 6'7" guy, whoa, how is that going to feel? I wonder how it's going to look, and just take it from there,
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely, you can see if you watch the fight just immediately that the height difference is something that sort of stands out massively. The fight was actually positioned after the quarterfinals had occurred. Just wondering, as you were sort of watching the fights on the monitor, was there anything that sort of stuck out to you that made you maybe think like, oh, I need to be wary of this going into my fight? Was there anything like that at all?
Yeah, well, my whole thing was I wasn't a striker. And if it was a kickboxing fight, I'd probably get my ass kicked by Rene Rose. So my whole thing, back in the day, like today, everybody does everything. You got a black belt jiu-jitsu guy that can wrestle, that can strike, or had pro kickboxing fights. So back in our day, it was you either did one or the other, and it was a perfect example of me being a grappler and Lenny Rose being a striker. So for us, my whole thing was about I had to get it to the ground eventually. But I didn't think it was going to be too hard, because I thought he was going to attack me. I was going to change levels and take him down. The other thing is, the thing that really stood out to me was at the rules meeting. One of the big problems, the questions that I had was they're allowing you to hold on to the ropes. And when I saw that rule, I was thinking, oh shit, that'd be kind of difficult to tear them down.
Mm-hmm.
And for me and Hickson especially, he needed to get guys to the ground. So I was there sitting there like little insecure about it, thinking those aren't good rules. I gotta protest those rules. So at the rules meeting, before we had the rules meeting, and we're gonna talk about it, I went up to Hickson personally and asked Hickson, hey, those rules, what are you gonna do with those rules when they hold on to the ropes? And Hickson was real cool, and he convinced me, saying that no problem. He said, if he holds with this hand, you hit him on that side. If he holds with this side, you hit him on that side. So pretty much like, fuck, that makes sense. If he's holding with this side, he can't defend this side. So I'll just hit, oh, wow, shit. And Hickson made it sound so simple and so routine that I was like, okay, cool. So when I was in the back and I was watching the fights, when I saw Hickson fight Yamamoto, and Yamamoto's a pro wrestler, but he does train, but all in all, he's a pro wrestler. So, he would probably stand no chance against Hickson in a straight up street fight. But the fact that he had ropes to hang on to and he was such a big guy, he gave Hickson fits. I mean, he was hitting Hickson a lot. And Hickson couldn't get him to the ground. And when I was watching that, I wanted to see, okay, let's see how Hickson does that. He holds on that side, hit on that side. He holds on this side, hit on this side. So I was like, okay, let's see that. And Rickson kept working and couldn't get him down. And Rickson started getting tired, took a lot of damage. And right there, I was backstage again. They're like, holy shit, this is going to be a rough night. So I the rules were already set. I already admitted, I agreed with the rules. And Rene Rose could hold the ropes. So right there, the big thing with me and Egan was, holy shit, what are we going to do? And, we noticed that there's a lot of standing, there's a lot of clinching because of that. And so we kind of had this idea that, Footstops, that's legal. So, someone that's 6'7" got bolts for feet. So I just felt that it'd be a big target. And, you have this image on you, how the hand and the feet have all bones, just little bones that go straight across. I had this image that, no problem, I'm going to shatter his feet with my heel. And as you know, it's not that easy to do. But so I just thought, okay, that's one of my outs. Okay, he holds onto the ropes. I can stomp his feet. So, that it was a lot of concern and a little bit of anxiety going into the fight after seeing what happened to Rickson.
So the fight starts, and it looked like there was a bit you were throwing a few feints to begin with on the feet. What was going through your head initially? Were you looking to sort of stand with him, or were you just trying to sort of bait him into getting into the ground?
I was not looking to stand with him at all.
Yeah.
So what we expected was, in all his fights that we saw, he came out and attacked. So I was expecting him to attack. So he came on and I expected him to attack, and I wasn't planning to trade blows with him. I was planning to just change levels and take him down. And then when he stood there with his reach and he's looking at me and I'm waiting for him to attack, it really threw a curveball in my whole strategy. So my next idea was, I gotta bait him. I gotta bring him into me. So that's why I kept my guard down. I had my face out. I was trying to make him attack me. And then he still didn't do it. And for me, I mean, the inside thoughts in my head was, oh my God, what am I gonna do? This guy's not coming. I can't strike with this guy. I don't want to shoot too far away from a takedown because he's gonna time it and knee me. And I was thinking, man, what am I gonna do? It was a real insecure feeling, and my whole thing was from there was just close distance. So what I did was I understood the striking range where he could hit me, and I would close as I get to that. And as soon as he made a move, I ran in.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you guys sort of get sort of a little bit up against the ropes. But what really stands out and what sort of becomes a bit of the story of this fight is the damage that he's doing to you. The shots to the back of the head, I mean, is obviously flagrantly, they're completely illegal now. But obviously the rules were okay for that. But so you could see it like a lot of fighters nowadays sort of get one little shot to the back of the head. And they're like, back of the head. But Rose is just landing these huge shots to the back of your head, the top of your neck, and then also to your legs. Looks like he's doing a lot of damage. Talk to me about the damage that you were sort of having in those moments.
So as soon as I close distance, he falls back and wraps like hands against the rope. He has no ground. So his thing is he has to stay on his feet. So from there, I'm there clinching. I'm relaxing, taking my time, trying to find a way to get him off the ropes and eventually get him to the ground. With his arms wrapped around the ropes, I couldn't get him off. I was trying to switch back and forth to his back, and in the meantime, because of the rule set, there was no illegal shots to the back of the head. Those shots to the back of the head were all legal. And what made it even harder and worse for me was he was so tall that he had so much leverage coming down from the top with the elbows and then with the punches to the back of the head. And I honestly, there were like two punches, I think, in that whole fight that kind of rocked me. You could kind of see me kind of go forward where I get kind of clicked out of consciousness a little bit. So it kind of rocked me to a point where I almost lost balance. So, I didn't think that it was unfair or dangerous. I didn't, like how you have the fighters get hit once nowadays, and they all of a sudden they're laying on the ground and can't continue. You know, they can't continue. The human body's tough, man. And, you know, these guys are those are guys just trying to get the easy W's, yeah. But you know, so I got hit a lot in the back of the head. As I was doing that, you know, he had a real smart plan, which I never thought of. He was as I was smashed up against the ropes, he was kicking his leg straight out and coming down with his heel in the back of my calf. I felt it, but you know how the adrenaline, you don't it doesn't hurt. It didn't hurt. I felt it hitting and think, oh, that's pretty good shots, but it didn't hurt. And I didn't want to show him it hurt, so I didn't like try and move my legs out of the way. He at each flurry, he would maybe heel my back of my calves about three shots in a row. As that's going on, I'm stomping on his feet. I caught him a couple good ones. If you watch the video, there's one that I caught him and he kind of looked up at his corner like, oh shit. You know, so it was hurting him, but you know, like the calves, like the punch to the back of the head, man, at the moment when the adrenaline's rushing, it's not really doing much. So it was rough, man. I'm trying to spin. And there's one point where I'm spinning and almost got his hand in the back of his arm. I mean his arm in the back of his you know, twist in the back, almost like a Kimura lock. But you know, he's strong, he's big. The ground's not helping me pin his body, so he just twists out of him and back where I started, man. It was a pretty tedious process.
Yeah, it sounds a bit demoralizing in terms of, and it looked demoralizing in terms of the fight. However, probably, in my opinion, one of the most underrated finishes because it had that sort of, you can see the struggle in the fight. Talk to me about what happens next and how you actually overcome that situation that you're in.
It was funny because there's no magic reason why. It was looking grim, but for me, I could feel my calves, I could feel my head getting hit, I could feel the toll getting taken on me, and I'm thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to slowly take damage because there's nothing else that I could have done. I was trying everything that I could think of. And it was real weird because at one point when he was, throughout the round, at one point in the round, I remember thinking, man, this is fucked up. If he can use the ropes, there's some way I can use the ropes. So what I did there was I said, doing what I was doing wasn't working. So I thought I have to do something new. I said, okay, the ropes are the new things. There's something about the ropes. Let me see what I can do with that. So I just randomly climbed up onto the lower level of the ropes. I actually none of my feet were on the ground. So I actually had 2 foot in a corner standing up, and I was up there. And then as soon as I got up, I didn't plan on anything. I was more thinking that, okay, you use the ropes, I use the ropes. So I stood up there, and what I noticed when I got up there was he no longer had the leverage to come down on me. And he didn't have that leverage to hit me in the back of the head and stuff. So I was thinking, okay, this is a lot better. But he also realized that it put him at a disadvantage, or it took away a lot of his advantages. So he kind of shocked me and made me go back to the ground. And I immediately went and climbed back on the ropes again. And then as that's going on, I'm kind of, he's trying to spin. I'm trying to spin. He's he's switching arms on the ropes. And I remember there was one time where, as that was happening, I was on his back. And I was looking straight up his back, and I was saying, holy shit, I'm on his back. And of course, he's 6'7", so I couldn't reach his neck. So with that whole thought in my mind that if he's using the ropes, I can use the ropes, I just instinctively started to climb the ropes. And as I climbed the 2 of the ropes, he was so adamant about just holding on to the ropes. I don't think he was that worried about what I was doing on the ropes. So it gave me that split second time enough to climb up and get on his back and wrap his neck. So as soon as I got up on the ropes, his neck was right there. And I just, if you notice the fight, I didn't even put in my hooks. I was just about getting the neck, and I got the neck, and I was squeezing my legs together. I didn't even have my hooks around them.
Yeah, and you all your weight is on him, right? And then you start sort of like come crashing back. It's a bit of a struggle, right? But yeah,
No,
talk to
as
me.
soon as as soon as I got the neck,
Yeah,
he tried to jump out of the ring.
that's it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, so as soon as he got the back, I noticed he was trying to lean out of the ring,
yeah.
and he's, it was kind of weird because I'm so high up and I'm looking over. I'm thinking we're gonna fall out of the ring because he was gonna jump out, and for me, I was like, I might hit my head. The fight might be stopped and started again on the feet. All I knew was I'm not letting go to choke. So my whole thing was you're gonna jump out of the ring. I'm gonna fall with you, and as we're falling and as we hit the ground and as we are on the ground, my choke's gonna be in you deep. So I all I knew is I wasn't letting go to choke. And so as we're going, I felt the momentum of us falling, and I'm thinking, okay, fuck it, I'll take the fall. I'm just holding on. I didn't let go to choke. And then, I don't know, it was weird. I didn't know what happened. I noticed later that the referee grabbed onto his leg before he flipped out. But all I knew is that all of a sudden it was like, shit, he's back in and he's falling backwards. I'm like, holy shit, I got the choke in. And then as soon as we hit the ground, I think he wasn't familiar with chokes. And if you're not familiar with a choke, when it's wrapped around you, it's tight, man, it's a shitty feeling. Your whole world gets put into a little ball. And he just started tapping, and like I said, if you see the joy of the fighter after the fight, it shows the insecurity they had during or before the fight. Mm-hmm. So for me, you saw me just get up and pound the mat and scream. I was really worried about what was going to happen in the fight.
And then I guess just to sort of wrap it up, physically after that fight, when you came backstage, how were you feeling?
After the fight, I felt nothing. I felt fine. Went backstage, sat down. I remember distinctively someone, Saliva, Konishiki, and Musashi Maru came to my fights. They came backstage. We congratulated me, and I thought, I want to go watch the fights. So I remember sitting down a little while, going out to watch the fights, and I noticed already when I started walking out to watch the fights, my calves were like tightening up. Mm. And I watched a little bit of fight, and I was telling Egan, shit, you know what? I'm going to have a hard time walking because I didn't know that there were contusions in my calf. So I was like, oh, shit, what am I going to do? So I told Egan, I don't want people to see that I'm injured. I don't want anyone to know that he did any damage on me. So I told Egan, shit, let's go back to the back. So I went to the back, and as I got to the back, I could barely walk. The contusions in the calves were so bad that I had a hard time walking. So lo and behold, glad it wasn't a tournament because I would have had a hard time fighting the second fight. So yeah, the damage back of the head, I felt no damage. I mean, maybe those are back of the head is a type of damage that will be accumulated in years to come. I mean, tell me, am I weird? I'm not weird. Yeah, so I think I'm okay. So as far as damage, it was those freaking heels to the back of my calves, man. Other than that, I was fine, man.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, let's wrap up this episode, and let's make sure, please, everybody, to like and subscribe and continue on. But Enson, any parting words before I?
Yeah. So anybody who has suggestions on what I should talk about or what I should have elaborated more on, we're still new to this, so we're still learning. So put in the comments. Let us know what I should have, what you wanted me to elaborate on more. Even if you have questions about other stuff, just give us feedback. Because we're here for you guys. The more feedback we can get, the better we can make it for you guys. So let us know. And okay, we're almost done. Hold on. And like and subscribe, man. I want a bunch of people coming on and following me.
There's no better end to that. Thanks, everybody.
He's saying subscribe, like and subscribe. Right, Bernie? Yeah, he said like and subscribe. Okay.